Hello to viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Camera Tuesday, we're going to talk about Panasonic Lumix S9. So let's dive deep into it. So what is this puppy? Well, this puppy is a low-cost full-frame camera, specifically focusing on video from Panasonic. Basically, this all camera companies are realizing that prices of cameras have become kind of stupid, and yeah, professional will buy that because again, that's their job. They can afford it. They can go YOLO on it. But here's the deal: the bulk of camera sales are not growing; it's shrinking year over year. Maybe sometimes, like let's say in 2023, you had a bit of luck in Japanese market, but almost all time you're losing constantly from 2010 to 2020. It's a constant decline. Again, from 2020 to 2030 it will be the same thing. If camera prices keep going up like they are, mobiles would be like bye. So for that reason, every camera, be a company, be it Canon, be it Nikon, be it Sony, be it Panasonic, all of them are releasing kind of lower cost full frame cameras. So they are releasing this. Now here's the, whether you like Panasonic or not, whether I like Panasonic or not, there are certain things they are really good at. Primary things that they are really good at is IBIS, meaning if you shoot video on this puppy, most of the time, if it's handheld, just one simple lens, this will this will be like damn, like flat out it will be like damn. It's actually good, like in terms of IBIS, even on a small body it's good. Now to be fair, it kind of makes sense given the fact that they have been working with micro four thirty small bodies for so long that they're like, yeah, we got this, so it's good. What about the price of this cheap camera? Well, it's $1,500. That should translate to 1.5 lakh rupees in India. I do not know the exact tax regime that's gonna be in, so I do not know the exactly this is what's gonna happen, and not to mention it's not launched yet, so in here, so I cannot give you more precise detail. It has a flip out screen, so for a video, that's good, that's awesome. It has a face detect autofocus. I am so happy and I'm so sad at the same time is that Panasonic was one of those weird companies that's like, we gonna create 1980s technology. It's like, sir, 1980 has passed. Move to face detect. That's how long ago we figured out that face detect is a superior way, mathematically superior way. No matter what you do, face detect is better. Of course, you can go from face detect of model A to model B and you could have better algorithm. Of course, one will perform better. But if you're gonna compare contrast based to face detect, yeah, it's like contrast have to require a supercomputer just to come close to face detect. So that's why, like, even with Panasonic's that good computational horsepower they were putting into their SoCs, it was not performing. It's again, the fundamental level is different. It's like, so they should have, like, this is how the company should have been. The moment they released the full frame lineup, a brand new L mount Alliance and this Lumix full frame series, they should have been like, okay, from this now onward, so we are serious, we are no more BS, serious. Face detect, they are like, no, nobody bought it, and they're like, oh, it's like, yeah, now you have to build it. So Lumix S5 Mark II was the first time they released it. It again, exponentially better, far more robust compared to their past system. But it's like, let me be very clear, contrast detect is more than good enough for photos. Like if you're taking photos, there is a very good chance it's going to be really good, but the moment you put it in a video, then it starts to fall apart. So again, and not to mention, world is moving more towards video, so having a system that is great for photo but not that great where you have breathing in your system, it's like yeesh. So flip out screen, face detect autofocus, and I'm very happy that they have learned that thou shall not go back to contrast. And again, they need to do this, only then they can improve the algorithms to reach a point where Canon is or Sony is. So this has exact same motherboard, exact same sensor. Like imagine this, they took the core out, planted it in a slimmer body, yeeted the electronic viewfinder, yeeted the mechanical shutter. Yes, it does not have a mechanical shutter, and yeeted one extra card slot, yeeted headphone port, all of those things. And they are selling in 4 colors. So if you are in the mood for funky colors, it actually has some cool colors. I am very fond of the blue color, so that's up to you. You have 4 color option. So this is Lumix S9. Now, what are the pros of this? Well, pro is that they are trying something new, and it's genuinely unique approach of doing things. Well, they are creating a LUT pipeline. That's why there is a dedicated button of LUT, L-U-T, look up table. So the idea is raw files are raw. It has a lot of information, but no way of contextualizing it, meaning how the heck you're supposed to take that raw data, render it on a screen. So to make that job easier, generally there is a lookup table for the computer, where like the SoC that is doing it, that's there. It's like the raw file, LUT, your output. So for people who are working with video files, that's their bread and butter. They already know this. That's why cinema camera, when you look the raw output, it's like very bland, very bleh. And the reason is they are capturing that. So when the colorist sits down on their computer on a professionally calibrated monitor, they apply LUT and then they fine tune based on the art director's feel, like what the art director is looking for and all that jazz. So LUT is a pipeline that is already established, already professional. So they are like, hey, we are doing the same thing. We are just calling it a different thing. We are calling it film simulation. No, all you are changing is LUT. So the idea is very simple. What if we take that pro end language, brought it into consumer market and make it super simple? So you have a LUT button, you press it, it changes your images to what you're looking for. Now, why would you want to do that? Here's the deal. This camera is focused on the Instagram generation, where if your photo is not shared instantaneously, it's useless. Did you even take it? So how do you do that? Here's the deal. Most photos that come out of camera is just bland. It always is bland, because again, real life is bland. So we work our ass off to boost the contrast, to enhance the saturation, to do this and that. Now, professional way of doing it is going through a computer. That's tedious, expensive, time consuming. So having a button where you can just go through quote unquote filters, that's a good way of doing it. So they are doing that. Basically, it's how Instagram filter is there, but a more professional variant of that. And again, Instagram filters, while the filter itself could be good, it's working on a basically what you call compressed data file. So it's not good. Garbage in equals garbage out. Here they have raw file to work on. So it's much better. So JPEG will be baked. So the LUT data would be permanently baked. You cannot undo it. However, if you are taking JPEG plus raw files, raw file will be intact. You open the raw file, it will look like a big, but you can undo it and change it however you want to do in Lightroom and any raw editing software. However, in video, it does not work the same way too, because to do that in video, again, you have to go to cinema camera. It's very difficult. So now, is that an issue? Yes and no. Be mindful. Many times we kind of want things for no reason, because you're like, I want 4K, I want 8K, I want 16K. It's like, where are your content being consumed most of the time? Here's the reality of reality. Most of the time, that's how smaller your screen is. That's it. That's all you're gonna get. Most of your YouTube videos or most of the content is not being watched on this. If you can afford to master it for this level, awesome. But it's not there. And here's it. People who are just like, chilling around and buying cheap cameras. Yes, this is cheap, because again, even in Panasonic's own lineup, there are cameras that are more expensive than this. So you want to share it on Instagram, nobody's going to spend more than a few minutes on it, maybe. So at that point in time, that fully baked look that looks cool, more than good enough to get the job done. Like, oh, cool TikTok, oh, cool reel, done, go home. So that's not as big of an issue as you think. So digital, and on top of that, they have a digital video zoom. Now this is a very clever implementation of something that could have been done and has been done. For example, when you look into a cinema camera, the megapixels are very low. Why? They are 1:1. So if you want to go to a cinema camera, it's like, hey, give me 4K. The megapixel count would be exactly 8 megapixel. Bit more, bit less, but almost exactly that, because they're supposed to do pixel to pixel. They're not supposed to underscale or overscale or anything like that. Just like exactly it is. 8K requires 33. So what about 24? That means 6K. It's a bit awkward number. So what they do, capture the 6K, then downscale it as in like digitally, and then give you. So we call it oversampling. Benefit, it does improve a bit of contrast, bit of resolving power is improved. Little bit. Do not expect like whoa difference, but little bit is improved. So that also gives you one option. It's like, if you're zooming in, let's say you have a lens that is 70 to 300. Okay, you zoom in, you reach to 300. It's like, what if I could reach a bit more? Here's the deal. You have one option left in video, that you can crop into your sensor, because again, you want pixel to pixel readout. You do not want to stretch. You do not want like, oh, I have let's say 480p image and I want to stretch it to full HD. You do not want to do that. However, if you're like, hey, I'm downsampling, instead of downsampling, I give you a complete readout, it's still acceptable, it's still good, it's still like, this is what it is. So for that reason, they are like, hey, what if your lens zooming ring, when you activate this function, and if you are in full HD, you zoom in, it zooms in, you zoom in, it zooms in more, and then it goes till a point where it's like, whoa, my lens is acting like 500 millimeter. So that's a very clever implementation of this method. So you do not have to think about it. Again, this is focusing on people who do not want to go to the grinding of that. Like, photography should be done for fun, not for like, this is my job, I need to get paid for it. Not that kind of employee. So different kind of mindset, and it's a very clever use of a technique. Now, can you do that with 4K? Yes, because again, you're still coming from 6K to 4K, so you have some breathing room. You can get some more zoom in. Do not expect like wow difference. Wow difference will happen in full HD, but in 6K to 4K is still enough, like you can still get them. Open gate recording. Now open gate recording is this simply means you take whole sensor. Now do not ask me why sensors are 4x3, because the best explanation I have is that in the real era, that's how it was. So they are like, they just kept working on it, which does not make sense. Sensors are supposed to be square. Why is supposed to be square? Because you have a round lens projection is in round, so square will give you perfect capture. So 4x3 is the closest to it. But what about our widescreen views? All our monitors is widescreen. That's why camera generally crops from top and bottom. Now that's good and all, but if you do open gate recording, you get almost square file. Now same thing has been done by GoPro. So the idea is you take a full sensor readout, and when you need to post, you crop in into that core file, open gate file, and be like, okay, I'm gonna give you, let's say, 16 by 9 by 16, basically a vertical video. I'm gonna share it to Instagram and I'm gonna share it to TikTok. Then you're gonna like, hey, what if I basically change it to square? Facebook, again, you can zoom out, so if people are watching you on Facebook, it's like, hey, I'm seeing more of the context. There is genuinely difference video in like, oh, these two videos are different. And it's like YouTube, again, widescreen, you can do that. So this gives you a very pleasant post-processing experience. Again, sometimes people can be like, hey, let's capture the full open gates, let's say, and then zoom in and move around just in that. This was done in the TV show House of Cards. Because again, they wanted to be damn sure, because again, tables are very big motif in that, and they wanted to be damn sure it's perfectly level. How would you perfectly level it? You zoom in, rotate it in post. So post is the final layer, so they're like, damn sure it's gonna be there. They did some weird things like that. So that open gate recording is a very pro level function. It's available in all cinema cameras, but having that on such a low cost camera is like, whoa. Panasonic is good in that regard. Now low bit rate is also available, because again, they know their audience. It's like, nobody's gonna be like, oh, transfer me 400 megabits file that is all intra. Yeah, no. It's like, give me a file that is light enough that if I put in my mobile phone, it does not poof my memory. So from 200 Mbps, it's going to downscale to 450 Mbps. A much smaller, much lighter file that your mobile phone can easily handle. You can transmit it, you can edit it, you can go YOLO on it. So there are some genuine pros on it, basically in terms of usability. Now what about the cons? Well, there is some significant con, which annoying con is that Panasonic is still not introducing what we call USB video class or UVC. Now UVC is becoming common, especially after the pandemic, is that all camera companies have started to introduce, meaning you plug a USB-C cable into your computer or your laptop. Tada! It shows up like a webcam. You do not need another application, because from a computer's point of view, it detects it like a camera. So that's why USB video class, it's a complete open, basically what you call protocol for USB. So they are using it. Benefit, you do not need to install another application. You can get it, or again, you can install it, you can get enhanced features from that, but you do not need to. So that's a very desirable thing. It makes your life much easier if you're wanting to use this sort of camera as a webcam. And you're like, yeah, streamers do that. Many streamers have like much more expensive setup than this. And given the fact that it has face detect and full frame, you can buy some quality lens that is prime and very wide aperture. So you can get very good shallow depth of field. Autofocus is good enough. And if you can, like, directly get a webcam out of it, it's awesome. Right now, what you have to do is go for HDMI capture and all that jazz. It's like, unnecessary. So I do not know why. Again, for this price point, I did expect that. No headphone out, which is weird given the fact that it's a video specific camera. Why? Again, I get it for my Canon 800D. This is long ago, before video was a thing, before TikTok was a thing. That's how ancient this camera is. So I get it. That time it was not important, but now it's important. You know this. Heck, Panasonic was the early ones that were starting to give headphone jacks in their Micro Four Thirds. They knew the importance. Why they removed it? So that's really odd. Given the fact that it's a video camera, you have to do that. And they have a method where you can install a XLR mic input. Panasonic made, not some other brand, third party or something like that. Panasonic made, using the digital hot shoe, it can directly talk, take the power. You do not need extra batteries for it. It will directly run on the main battery. And you can connect 2 or 4 microphones with it. And it's a really good solution for people who want to do a more of a permanent kind of setup, or they require quality audio. Awesome. You can't do that here. They because they have removed the mechanical shutter, they no longer have any sort of flash trigger. That's like genuinely, like, really, do you really need it to cost cut that much? Like, there is a point, and then there is like, okay, too much. So this reached a point where it's like, you have a digital shoe, use that. You removed it. It's like, that's like cost cutting, and then there is cheap. This reached a cheap point. And the reason why I will not recommend this camera to anyone is it has video recording limit in 4K and 6K. Why? Like, we crossed that era, my man. Heck, Panasonic was the earlier first camera that I know that was big and successful. Panasonic GH5 is that they directly paid the tax. That's why it was so same price as A7 Mark III when it was not S Mark III, A7 Mark III. It's a very old camera. So it was $2,000 because again they were paying the tax for European, and they did not have recording limit, meaning you can keep recording it as long as your battery is there, memory is there, and it's not overheating. So in a cold places or like indoor environment, people had like 2-hour interviews and 3-hour interviews, things of that nature. So that company creates a camera that is like limited. Now you're like, okay, heating, but here's the again, why you are trimming something down so much that is becoming painful? We already went through this when we were talking about mobile phones. Mobile phones were like reaching a point where they were becoming this thin. I do not know whether you guys have remembered this aspect. Yes, this thin mobile phones. Even smartphones also went through a point where it's like thin, extra thin. Now they're like, yeah. There is a point where it becomes a diminishing return and actually becomes uncomfortable to use. They're like, okay, let's make it as big as possible. Again, there is a balance to it. You cannot be just like, let's squash it. Why did you squash this camera so much? You needed a cooling element. Put a cooling element. Like, this is the cooling element in their own camera, Panasonic 5 Mark II. Like, you have a top fan, pulls air in, dumps heat on the sides. Their own camera. This exact same electronics is in this exact same body. Why the heck you remove that? That's a point where it's like, okay, you're causing too much. Because again, you should have a heat sink where it's like, dumping heat into the body and body is getting hotter. Yeah, it would be uncomfortable, but okay. It's like people are like, hey, you want a long recording? Because again, if the heat sink is done properly, you can have a small USB fan blowing air on it and it's gonna keep working. There are coolers. There are coolers for Fuji cameras where they're like, okay, the heat sink is good enough, but if you give it a little bit of airflow, it's like, I got this, I will not overheat. None of that exists here. So this goes back before that EU law, before like the first time when Canon 5D Mark II, if I'm not mistaken, had the full HD video recording. People were like, whoa. But that time it had 10-minute recording limit. It went back to that. So I get it. People are like, okay, are taking clips and all that. But here's the some people have more attention span than that. And again, if I'm doing something like this, even this camera has 30-minute limit. This is like 4 minutes to 6 minutes to 15 minutes. Even if the camera is not overheated, it's like, that's just like, no. That's just like, looks like a triple feature. Because if they would have been like, hey, it will overheat, that's a different thing. Because again, you can cool it if done properly. But limit is like artificially limiting it. I'm really not happy with that. No EVF, meaning if you are shooting in broad daylight, good luck reading a 1980s LCD. Again, that's true for all camera. Side card door is also removed. There is a point where it's like, you cut cost way too much. So con wise, it's like not having a fan, having a video recording limit of minutes. Eesh. So for whom this camera is made, this is the part where I have no idea. I have genuinely no idea. Like, if you are, hey, I want to have another competitor and I want to try something new, go YOLO on Panasonic. I have nothing against it. It's a really good camera. And again, after they started to use face detect, it's actually starting to be a useful camera competitor. So you can buy, as of now, Lumix S9 Mark II X. Do not ask me why they released that, but they have. So S9 Mark II X variant is the most unlocked variant you can buy. And this has one of the most amazing features. You do not need SD card. You can directly record video in your basically SSDs. That's awesome. That's like short up take money. You'll think like, oh, I want open gate. Once you see the data rate of it, you're like, yeah, I don't want it, because you have to buy ludicrously expensive SD cards to capture that. SSD, much cheaper, basically terabyte per dollar. It's much cheaper, and you can get much higher speed when you're doing on editing on your computer. You can directly edit on the SSD, or you can dump it at like ludicrous high speed. So that's a really good feature, and it has like ProRes and all that function. So it's a really good high capacity camera with a dual card redundant recording and all that, and it has fan, so it will be suitable for India where it does not overheat. Really good. Like, it's a really good camera, and it's not too expensive. In India, the price of this body is available as of now. It's around 2 lakh rupees, 200,000, less than that, bit less than that. I know for a fact that that camera will not be like 1,50,000. So the gap may sound huge. It's not that much, and given how big of a jump this is like, just buy this. Yeah, it will be a bit painful, but just buy this. And having that like, oh, it's a very slim camera, trust me, you're gonna hate it. There is a reason negative cameras had this sort of lump. And it's not because of the roll is cylindrical, but while we had this, we learned it the hard way. You must be able to hold the camera easily. Lightweight camera, good grip, awesome. Lightweight camera in a flat pancake where you're holding it like this, it's not comfortable. The moment you put any lens on it, it's like, yeah. And if you're like, I'm not going to put lens on it, then why are you buying an interchangeable lens camera? So that's why, flat out, in Panasonic, just buy S5 Mark II X. If you can't go that much, buy S5 Mark II. Because again, all the small things and all that, those are good distraction, not the like, whoa, you want that, that this puppy has. What about Sony and Canon? What will they give you? Well, Sony and Canon, both of them will give you much more robust autofocus in terms of video. And the cameras that I'm sharing here, both will give you 4K 60 uncropped. And I have to say, I'm actually shocked that Canon does this, is that Canon gives you 4K 60 uncropped surprisingly cheaply. R8 is surprisingly cheap for the uncropped 4K 60. Like, oh, it does not downsample from 6K. It does not matter. Trust me. Like, you will be far more happier with 4K 60 full readout than you will like, okay, 6K to this. It's like, yeah. And again, if you are, I want that sort of open gate and all that, ta-da! So flat out, Canon R8 is a very low cost option. Most likely it will be cheaper than that, and you will have much more healthy and robust supply chain and all that jazz. So R8 is there. If you want to go a bit fish, you can go into R6 Mark II. It has again ProRes scenario, so you have dual card slot, all the pro level functionality is there. If you're like, hey, I want Sony, again, Sony has ZV-E1. Again, megapixel is low, but again, I said 4K is only 8 megapixel. This is 12 megapixel. So they actually still have a zoom in and crop in. And again, 120 FPS 4K full readout. So I genuinely have no idea what Panasonic was thinking, because again, there is a cost cutting and then there is cheap. This camera reaches a point where it's like, okay, we are selling a grip with it because it's so hard to handle. No. So that's the whole point. Again, if you want Panasonic, go YOLO on S5 Mark II X. You want Sony, go YOLO on basically ZV-E1, similar kind of scenario. If you want low cost and more robust autofocus, go with R8. If you want like more pro-ish, more robust, R6 Mark II is there. So these options are much better. So this was my presentation on basically Panasonic's latest S9. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free, and as always, thanks for watching.